So I think this is going to bear with us for the use of MLA that I want to get us into a rhythm here and continue to look at. And so I'm going to return to something I posted previously for you guys. And this will be familiar, but I want to just go over it because this is a key element in the creation of your argumentation paragraphs, okay? The ability to do these things. Now, you'll note here some things I talked about, a step-by-step process, and I will probably again refer back to the Bordeaux example, continue to hark on that. But real quickly here, you introducing material, quoting the material, properly citing it, and following up with an explanation. I borrowed from this example here from Understanding Comics, and I walked through and I ultimately came up with this product at the end. Now, if you're considering this in terms of looking at what we did last time, this is sort of my topic sentence. And then rather than have a statement or claim, I sort of just kind of go into an integrated quotation. There's my citation. And then I explain. And let's see, basically 3 sentences here. Actually 4. 3 to 4 sentences here where I then try to sort of set up not only an explanation, but a bit of transition. I did a little color coding on that. Now, in class, I asked you guys to look at this and do this example. So I offered you this example. And the key important thing here was understanding the thesis statement, because you need to be able to relate back to that in the explanation. And then I asked you to choose from one of these 2 quotations. I offered you a citation. This was so that you would know how to cite it. Okay. And then I offered you a job that I want you to do. Now, what I went ahead and did was I recreated another example work here. So let's walk through this. So I took both those quotes from this example here, both the quotes. The first one, a form of amplification through simplification, and the quote, when we abstract an image through cartooning, we're not just so much eliminating details as we are focusing on specific details by stripping down an image to its essential, quote, meaning. An artist can amplify that meaning in a way that is realistic art can't. Okay. Now, what did I came up with? So I gave a nice topic sentence. All right. So again, and then I actually included a statement this time. So you'll see here, regardless of whether you consider it hidden or not, there is a real power in comics. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm very specifically harking back to this, an element inside my own thesis statement. I'm staying on track here. All right. Then next, that power can communicate complex ideas through simplified forms. So I just keeping it simple here. The next sentence here, McCloud, in his work Understanding Comics, calls this idea of comics as a form of amplification through simplification. So quick note here. All right, so I want to point out some details here. So I've introduced it. Ideally, I probably could have put Scott McCloud, given the author's full name. And if I wanted to be even more precise, if you think about the Bordeaux example, this would be a good point where maybe I introduce who Scott McCloud is if I have not used him already. What I'm doing here is I'm presuming that I may have already mentioned him previously in the work, because I have not used his first name. Typically, when you introduce an author or something the first time, it's really good to present this with their full name, give us kind of a full workup introduction of them. All right. So I say McCloud in his work, and so I've identified the work Understanding Comics, calls this idea of comics as, and notice how this flows into, calls this idea of comics as a form. Okay, it's almost like the quotation mark's not even there, but the quotation mark is simply there to demark where what I'm saying and what McCloud is saying begin and end. But it kind of seamlessly flows together. If you're doing your integrations right, that should work. All right. Now, when I get to the end here, all right, I get to the end there and I end of the quotation. I then close quotes. I put the page number because I've already got the artist, in this case, the writer's name, and I've got the work identified. But I don't need anything other than just the page number here. If I had just said in Understanding Comics, there calls this idea. If I'd done that way, I would put McCloud here. But since I've got this, but notice the close quotes, cite, then punctuate. I want to emphasize this very particularly because if I put a punctuation mark right here and not here, what I'm accidentally doing is I'm accidentally connecting this 30 to the next sentence. If I put a punctuation mark here and here, I'm making this its own sentence. Keep in mind that a period represents a full stop. So by doing this exactly like this, I am very clearly making sure that this 30 connects to this quote. There's no question of it. And the purpose of the quotation marks here, very specifically, are there to help service the idea of distinguishing my words from the author's words, okay? Now I go on to explain this. All right, the second part of introducing and then, of course, citing, and now I've got to give some explanation. In other words, comics can take something complex, say a human face, and simplify it down to its basic features, and what you are left with is basically an emoticon. Okay, I'm using a specific reference if you think about what we had in the book. And then I go on here. Emoticons are used by us all the time to communicate semi-complex ideas rather than typing it out. This is because, as McLeod notes, and again, I've chosen to go back, so I provided some explanation, in fact, 2 sentences here before I then return us to McLeod, and I use the second quotation here. When we abstract an image through cartooning, we're not so much eliminating details as we are focusing on specific details, ... its essential meaning. Now, I've taken some liberties here, and this little ... right here, this is what we call an ellipses. If you go back to the full quote here, you'll see here, when we abstract an image through cartooning, we're not so much eliminating details as we are focusing on specific details. And then you'll see by stripping down, okay, an image too. So what I did here is those ellipses are letting my audience know that there was something there that I removed. In this case, what I removed were all these right here, by stripping down to its essential meaning. And then I chose to leave this off. I probably could have put a ... after here as well, but I do the single quotes because I'm quoting inside a quotation, close quotes, and again, cite, then punctuate. And then I still have to provide some sort of explanation transition. So here we go. When you can see this and understand this ability found in cartooning comics, one can realize just what a real power this can be for communicating. So now I'm not only explaining, but I'm also beginning to transition out. So what I'm going to ask that you guys do is when you go and take a look at this, I'm going to ask that you practice this on some work for our second form this week. So your second form this week, your first form I'm asking you to put to practice those argumentation paragraph material. Our second one, and I'm going to go to it right now, and I'll put the link to this blog post in this discussion too, just so that in case for some reason you're having issue finding it. Go back under here under week 11, and here is our second posting. So it says practicing integration. Take away from our lecture material, I want you to use a quotation from one of your sources you're going to use as part of your argument and integrate it into a paragraph. So I'm asking you to basically practice what we were just talking about. Okay, this means introducing the material, setting up the rationale, integrating and citing the quoted material, and providing an explanation. So this is something, by the way, ultimately that can tie into it, builds upon what we talked about in the first discussion forum, and it's ideally helping you move towards this assignment that's due next Monday, where I'm going to ask you to share with me 3 potential paragraphs that might end up in your argument section of your paper. All right. Good luck.